Hi, Howie here, and I just want to take you very quickly through the anatomy of a Scrum Master using Lisa Adkins' X-Wing model. Some of you might have seen this before, but just to break down the different elements that consist of it. I find this really useful when you're a Scrum Master that's maybe been working for a little bit of a time and you're thinking to yourself, okay, so what is it that I really need to be sort of focusing on? What's the growth I need to sort of go on in order to better facilitate my teams, better serve the organization I'm working in? And what I've found over the years is it's really rare that one of us is fully rounded in this model, so it's worth knowing what our weaknesses are. So let's start with the really core cut part that's going to be key to all of us really, which is what's our knowledge of Agile like? Because as we all know by this point, Agile goes beyond just Scrum. What's my knowledge of Kanban? What's my lean thinking right? What's my systems thinking right? Do I need to know more about scale for the particular setup I'm in and all the options that brings for us? It's very easy, I find, particularly when we're new as Scrum Masters, to get fixated on just one framework. But actually, if we're realizing it there, then maybe it's time to explore other ones. Extreme programming, for example. I've met people who've been very aware of it, but have never really looked at it in much depth. And there's a lot there that can add to our practice. So this is mainly a knowledge acquisition piece, but it's easy to neglect it. And then we've got kind of this wing of the X-Wing, if you like, which for me is more about the kind of teaching side of the Scrum Mastery. And you can break that down into two different parts again. So I tend to separate these in my mind between sort of being a mentor and being a teacher. And these might be slightly similar in your head, but for me they're quite different. Mentoring for me is I have knowledge to impart. So my background from product ownership and business analysis allows me to mentor a team in those particular practices. You as a Scrum Master might have come from a different professional background, and I think it's really important to be really authentic about this and be clear with teams about what you can help them with in this role as a mentor and which is actually outside of your experience. Teaching's a little bit different. Obviously I do a lot of teaching these days, but I've had a few colleagues who've come along and taught with me not to do a full formal 2-day Scrum Master course, but just to learn how to teach little concepts like how does the definition of done work? What's a daily Scrum really about? To maybe new team members, or maybe an entirely new team, or maybe just a stakeholder who's interested. We forget sometimes, particularly when we're using a particular Agile framework, that the language becomes really second nature to us, but to others it's really good to be able to explain it in a short, compact way to a complete newcomer without necessarily having to explain the entirety of the framework at the same time. If we go to the other side, and if I'm honest, I find this is where more Scrum Masters tend to have greater depth and greater strength, but we can always invest in it further. We've got skills such as coaching, which is so fundamental to us as Scrum Masters. Indeed, in many of the frameworks outside of Scrum, we often call them seed team coaches, or Agile coaches, or even ways of working coaches. So it's a core skill. But again, although a lot of us might have an awareness of it, or might recognize we're having some coaching conversations, I find that once you scratch the surface of this, people are quite surprised about the depth you can go to. So professional coaching is a discipline all of itself, and you could spend your lifetime mastering it. Spending a little bit of time to make sure you're safe and can coach people in a way that's ethical and responsible goes a long way, and actually opens up a lot of opportunities outside of just the Agile space. Often if you're dealing with conflict, for example, a coaching stance can be a quite good one to inhabit. And then similar but different, and again one that I would say is the most entry-level one that most of us are thrown in as Scrum Masters day one, is our facilitation skills. Now, facilitation in this regard, I'm not necessarily talking so much about facilitating the removal of blockers, for example. I am quite specifically talking about facilitating a group of people in an event, for example, maybe in a planning event. Yeah. Maybe you're facilitating a retrospective. Now, again, we may all feel we're quite good at this, but I find that feedback's key to make your facilitation better. And what I do find is different groups need quite different styles of facilitation. So, for example, one group facilitating a retrospective that I worked with, it was mainly about making sure we only had one voice at once. There was complete psychological safety. Everyone was very willing to speak. It was actually about trying to focus that group down to one thing at a time. Whereas I've been into other organizations where teams aren't as comfortable or as used to sharing their views about how they could work better together, and so a more structured facilitation technique that helps draw people out to be more beneficial. So this is probably one we're most familiar with. And then we come to the bottom sort of triad, if you like, of this X-Wing diagram. And there's 3 different bits here. I'm going to admit straight away to the one, which I'm a bit weaker on, and always have been, but it's got worse over the years, if I'm being honest with you, which is, what's my technical excellence, right? How good a coder am I? Or how good of a tester am I? What can I bring if I'm in that tech space? Or I'm in another engineering space, then whatever that is, or I'm doing Agile for HR, how well do I know the domain of HR policy, for example? Some of us might come into this role gifted with an incredible depth here already, and that's great. If we've not got a great depth, we probably need a little bit, just so at least we can understand the conversations which are going on around us, even if it doesn't mean we could put them into practice. And then there's 2 bits on either side. One of these I admit to probably being a little bit stronger on, which is, what's my kind of business knowledge? Yeah? How well do I understand how what we're doing fits into enabling our corporate goals, whether that's a for-profit organization or whether it's for a charitable sector or a .gov enterprise, still understanding how all that fits together, it is really important. It allows us, for example, to better mentor, right, our product owners if they're a bit weaker in that spot. Allows us sometimes to liaise with stakeholders more strongly because we can understand their language and what their pressures and levers are. So again, some of us might come with a lot of this. For some of us, this might feel almost uncomfortable, and that's fine. It's recognizing where you are and where you need to be. And then finally, over on this other side, which for me, I'd say I'm kind of middling on this, which is, what's my transformation expertise? This is, how do I take whole organizations that have never heard of this before, all right, and take them on that journey, understanding it can be quite a lengthy one. I've been lucky enough to be involved in some transformations up into the sort of mid-thousands. And it's been really, really exciting work, very hard work, very exciting. But 100,000 people plus organizations, not a journey I've been on. And some of us might feel very comfortable, for example, taking a couple of teams on that journey, but might balk at the idea of taking hundreds of people on that journey with us. So like I say, this isn't a framework to run yourself down with, right? This is a framework to just think, okay, where am I? Be reflective. I'm here on coaching, but I'd like to get to here. And what are the steps I need to take as a Scrum Master, as an Agile coach, to make that transition? Am I comfortable that my technical knowledge is here? And actually that's fine. And it gives me then the resource to reinvest elsewhere. So there's loads out there. Thanks to Lisa Adkins for the model in itself, where you can go read more about this, but I just thought I'd like to give you a brief introduction. It's exactly the kind of content that on an advanced certified Scrum Master that we go into, particularly on that, for example, we focus a lot in this area over here, because as Scrum Masters moving out of that novice stage into practitioner, that's often the biggest area for growth.